Warning, this podcast contains spoilers for The Last of Us Episode 8 and potentially some minor spoilers from Ant-Man and The Wasp Quantumania in our Nerd Out section, so be warned. Hello, my name is Jason Concepcion.
And I'm Rosie Knight.
And welcome to X-Ray Vision, the Crooked Media podcast, where we dive deep into your favorite shows, movies, comics, and pop culture.
In this episode, hope you're hungry, because in the airlock...
Dinner served!
Dinner served! Some delicious venison! In the airlock, we're talking about The Last of Us Episode 8. And in Nerd Out, it's a theory on Ant-Man and The Wasp, Quantumania. You might have heard of it.
If you want to jump around, as always, check the show notes for the timestamps. Let's get into it. Coming up next, the airlock. We're stepping out of the airlock and into the restaurant for The Last of Us Episode 8, titled When We Are in Need, written by Craig Mazin and directed by Ali Abbasi. And we open with scenes of deep winter. We see a not quite frozen lake. Somewhere in Colorado, we see a sign for Silver Lake, Colorado, and over these wintry images, we hear the voice of a man saying, "Behold, the tabernacle of God is with men." The preacher's name is David. He is the leader of a small Christian fundamentalist group whose motto is, "When we are in need, he shall provide." And David is reading these lines with sadness, it seems. You know, he's got this, he really projects this kind of like humility, but almost like he's trying to project this humility.
Yes.
He's been weighted down with this responsibility, and he's all too familiar with the sadness that responsibility brings. There's a young girl and a woman we assume to be her mother sitting close to the preacher. They look distraught. He then asks the girl if she remembers what comes next. She doesn't, so he finishes it for her. He says, "And God will wipe the tears from their eyes, and there will be no more death, neither sorrow nor crying. The former things are passed away." Do you know what that means? And basically it means heaven is pretty good. Now this, the daughter and the woman are the family of, we are soon to find out over the course of this episode, the man who was killed in the previous episode when the group of raiders attacked Joel and Ellie.
Yeah. It's definitely very interesting. I really like the choice here to show us what happened, show that the raiders were the aggressors, and then to have this kind of opening where they want to flip that on its head, but there's always this creepy edge to it where we know what really happened. We know what these people do to survive. We know they will go out and kill people. But here are the family. Here's the fallout. And it's that question of what will we do to survive? But here we're not going to get an empathetic version of that story. This is something, as you will gain from the next line that David says, this is something much darker.
Well, in the most empathetic, reading of a situation like this, in the you do what you have to do to survive formulation, right? You get killed taking another people's stuff. That will just kick off this cycle of retribution, you would imagine. And that's very much what this, not just this episode, but this series is about on a certain level. And it really seems to, no spoilers, but to be pointing ahead towards the themes and content of the sequel game to The Last of Us. It
really does.
Yeah.
From Kathleen to here, we're really getting a lot of hints towards what happens in the second part of the game.
And it also, not to belabor it, but it also, when that's your dad, you don't want to believe they do bad stuff, right?
No,
they died doing something good. He died fighting the bad guys.
He was a hero,
Yeah, the bad guys killed him.
I think that's really powerful, and I think that they do a great job with this character. Is the young girl being your in character? She is ignorant to what is really going on in this colony, as we will find out. And also, as we later learn, David is a manipulator. He is a groomer.
Oh, par excellence.
He is a
groomer.
A violent, horrible man. This is someone who who is manipulating the people who follow him. And I love that we do get this one moment of somebody who truly believes that they have been wronged and they don't know the context. And obviously to her, it's just a shocking loss. But like you said, I like that it sows that seed of retribution, and we'll see the young girl trying to seek that out later too.
The girl asks if they can bury her dad. And a look passes between David and a few picked men here in the what we are soon to learn is like the restaurant of this former resort. And David is like, nah, the ground is it's frozen. It's frozen solid, folks. We're gonna have to wait till the springtime. Don't worry, we'll let's put a pin in that, and we'll come back to it.
Thing.
Let's say March, April. We'll come back to it.
Yeah, and as you will, if you've read The Road, if you've watched The Walking Dead, you probably understand at this point what is really going on in Silver Lake, because when she asks that and David shoots a look to his men, including Troy Baker here in a new role who played Joel in the game, you know what's going on, and it is creepy.
You do,
AF.
yeah. You definitely feel it, and if you don't know right here, you will. You certainly understand that something is amiss. Mm-hmm. Later on, David bids his congregation goodbye. They head back to their homes, and James, his lieutenant, comes up. This is the man that David exchanged the glance with, and they start talking about the stores, how much meat we got left, elk, venison, all that stuff. And James is like, 1 or 2 weeks, somewhere thereabouts. And you learn that David has groups scouring the surrounding area for supplies, but there's really nothing to be found in this region. David then tells James that, I'm sensing some doubt here. And James is like, what? No, the congregation, obviously, it's tough. People are hungry. It's very, very cold, but their faith remains unshaken. And David's like, no. I'm talking about you, bro. What about you? And James is like, no, I still believe the last. And it's always when someone says, I still believe, and then goes on to keep talking, right?
It's that nothing matters after the but, right? It's I still believe, but.
Yeah, there's no but here, but it feels like it because James says, I still believe. Now, and then, the last 6 months have been hard. But he insists that he's with David. But again, it seems like a pretty weak assurance. Back with our friends Ellie and Joel. Ellie is checking on Joel's wound. It's certainly not bleeding anymore after Ellie's kind of hasty and rough sewing up of the injury, but, infection,
and
the
Joel's
regular kind.
Struggling.
Yeah, is certainly a concern. And Joel is absolutely out of it. There's this wonderful, maternal moment, with the role suddenly flipped where Ellie chews some jerky, almost desperately, and then leaves it on Joel's blanket for him to eat should he rouse himself and need to eat. And then she slips away to go hunt. She tries to tackle a rabbit. That doesn't work. And then soon after that, she spots a deer, takes aim, shoots it. But the animal, it's not a kill shot, so the animal kind of runs. She has to go find it. And of course, it drops dead right at the feet of David and James, who are in the area looking for forage, looking for supplies. Ellie gets the drop on him. She's like, drop your rifles, turn around, walk away. David goes right into preacher mode.
Yep.
And
he's ready.
He's ready. Specifically, as we are going to learn over the course of this episode, he sees a young girl by herself. Mm-hmm. And David is like, oh shit, here we go. Hey, do you have 10 seconds? Hey, just before you shoo us off, your deer, you have 10 seconds to talk about, where you are spiritually. And she just goes into his pitch.
You need to help us. We got other people, women, children. He's
what
going
about
for
them?
The guilt trip. And he really wants Ellie to go back with him.
Now, and he offers a trade. He's like, maybe there's something we can help you with. You give us half the deer, and we have stuff. And then before he can even list anything, she just blurts out, "Do you have medicine?" And then David is like, aha, here is a vulnerability. Here is a thing that I sense I have leverage here. And David's like, oh yeah, we got lots of medicine. You can come back with us to our cabin. Ellie's wisely is like, no, I'm not going to do that.
Thank God. I was worried for a moment, like she's not the most sensible person.
I mean, she's doing all this for the first time,
Yeah, but I like that here she trusts that gut. That's that instinct that when you're a kid, your parents are like, if you feel that, just follow it. Like if somebody gives you a bad vibe, don't go. And she does the right thing and she's like, I'm not going back with you.
Then she does the slightly less unwise thing, but still unwise thing, which is she lets James go back to get the medicine. David is like, hey, go get 2 bottles of penicillin from Howard and a syringe. And James is like, he's looking in his eye like, is this code for
He's trying to
something?
decode it, yeah.
Yeah, and David is like, it's not code, James. Just do it. Now, when he says it's not code, James, that should have been Ellie's first clue that like, oh yeah, that's right. Part of a group. I'm sending this guy back.
He might tell somebody.
Yeah, I need to be on guard here.
But it's about Joel's survival. I think Ellie
yes.
has that tunnel vision this episode just about how can she help the man that she cares so deeply about come through this? How can she avoid being alone, which, she said to Sam was her greatest fear.
Yeah. So David and Ellie end up in the ruins of this house. They've built a fire and they're sitting there with this deer carcass, and Ellie's got her gun on David the whole time. And David is continuing his pitch. He's like, why don't you join us? Why don't you join our group? And Ellie's like, it doesn't sound that great because you yourself said that you're starving. And he's like,
yeah,
it
doesn't
that's
sound
true,
like you're doing a good job, bro.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like you're doing great. You're stealing my deer. Is that not the case?
I am a child and I killed the deer and now you are stealing it from me. I don't think it sounds like a good trade.
And he's like, yeah, but I'm a decent guy and I'm just trying to do right by the people who rely on me. And she's like, okay, so you're their leader? And he's like, yeah, but they chose that. They wanted that to be the thing. And Ellie, and this is good. This is actually great that Ellie sniffs this out right away. It's like, is this some weird cult thing? Like, the answer is yes.
She knows.
Very, very much
the answer
so.
is
Yes.
absolutely yes, babe. Like 100% yes.
And David does not give the most authoritative answer when Ellie says, is this some weird cult thing? And David's verbatim answer, his actual answer is, He's like starts with this very long and then he goes, yeah, just your basic preacher, Bible preacher, that's it. What was the bro? What was the 5 seconds of
Everyone in this colony needs to have better prepared answers. You're going to see this time and time again. I'm like, bro, you could have just said no. If somebody asks you if it's a cult, just say no. But then we will learn that for some reason throughout this episode, probably his own delusional mind, but David sees something in Ellie that he thinks is a kindred spirit. So I also wonder if that's why he doesn't immediately lie to her.
Let's get back.
Maybe she likes cults. I don't want to deny it in case she's into it.
I wanted to talk about this when we get to that moment,
yeah.
but let's talk about it now. This is part of David's pitch to Ellie. I took that to be David's just a flat out is grooming this girl.
Oh, you're
so special. Yeah. Like you're the only one that understands me. All these people I'm with, they don't get it. They don't get it the way you and I understand. Yeah, like you really understand what's going on here, and I feel like you're a kindred spirit. Like I took that as, oh, David's an even deeper scumbag than we know about right now.
He definitely is, and you see that in the way that he approaches Ellie. Like the actor who brings him to life is so
deeply unsettling performance
in this role. It's so quiet, and but at no point, what I really love about this is they don't try and fake us out. They understand that we know the genre enough that they don't need to make us think, oh, maybe it is a good place. Because if you think about it, like The Walking Dead, I think a lot about the sanctuary storyline, which was actually one of my favorite storylines, where they seek out this place that's allegedly the safe place for survivors. They get there, they get fed, they eat this delicious meal. Lo and behold, oh, actually, you're going to be dinner. Like, sorry, bro, spoiler alert, like season 5 The Walking Dead or whenever that happens. But like, I like here that from the outset, you are just given clues constantly, atmosphere clues, tone clues, visual clues, vibe clues, that David is just bad news. And I think that's a really good way of building the creepiness and tension that kind of leads to this explosion of violence at the end of the episode.
So we get some of David's backstory. He says that he was just a math teacher, which, again...
Bad vibes.
The bad vibes continue. Like, this was a person working with young people, we should assume, and consider what we learn over the course of this episode, very troubling. And he says, I was not even religious until after the end of the world. We learned that he was at the Pittsburgh QZ, which fell due to ongoing battles between Fedra and the Fireflies. And then he and some people started heading west, and they'd find a camp, and that raiders would attack the camp, and then they'd have to move on, and picking up people along the way. And that's how they came to be here in Colorado. And he believes that all of that constant kind of movement to the west, attack, a search for peace, the death on every side, all of that was as it should be, because it's what brought them here. All of this happens for a reason. Don't believe it? Check this out. And then David tells Ellie, recently, I sent out a foraging party of 4. And winter's been hard, food's been scarce, people have been starving. Only 3 men came back. Now, the man who died was a father, and he was killed by a crazy man traveling with a little girl. And now Ellie's like, oh, fuck. And she stiffens. But before she can even think about pulling the trigger on her rifle, David's saying, James, lower your gun. And we realize that they've already got the drop on her. James, for his part, recognizes that Ellie was the girl who was with the man who killed their companion and their friend. And David is like, yeah, but forget all that. Just give her the medicine. James is like, what? He's like, yeah, just give it to her. And then David again offers to take Ellie, and he's like, I can protect you. You're out here alone. This is no place, this world is not safe for a young girl alone. Ellie takes the medicine and runs off. And James is like, I can't believe that you're just going to let her get away. But of course, he's not going to do that.
Yeah, I feel like this is a good sign as well that David is clearly not like a very trusted leader. Even though he has this power, he kind of rules through this fear, as we'll find out in a couple of scenes. And also, I just find it very interesting that that's James's first thought. It's not like, obviously we're going to follow her, or what's the plan next? He just thinks like, oh, you saw a young girl and you gave her what you wanted because you're a creep. Like, it's really interesting. They show you so many dynamics in these small moments.
I think that that's right. And I think that it's even more insidious than that, because it tells you that David has, even from his followers, a secret side.
Yes.
Because James is like, the fact that James doesn't understand, of course David's not going to leave it here. This is not the end of it. You think that was just like largesse? That was just generosity? No. The fact that James doesn't pick that up lets you know that David has a deeper, more secret side from the people who, he's ostensibly in this like intimate leadership role with.
I love that, actually, because that is a great read where it's like David's falsification of who he is and this kind of kindness and generosity. He has actually sold that to them so well that James could believe that he would just give this away because he thinks it's the right thing to do. And I love that pickup that I almost kind of didn't even realize when I was watching, that he wasn't a preacher before. When you read it in the context after a couple of rewatches and then talking about it with you, that is just so creepy, because that is a man who picked up the beliefs of others in order to become a cult leader, to make the most of a post-apocalyptic situation for himself. That's so horrifying. And I think that I wrote about this at IGN this week, like about this episode. I think that is the notion of why these kind of characters are always presented as the scariest thing you can come up against in an apocalypse. What if it wasn't the best of us who thrived at the end of the world, but the worst of us.
Yeah.
And David is absolutely that, a man who knew how to manipulate the end of the world into a situation that now he is incredibly happy with because he's surrounded by women and children who he is in control of. Very scary stuff. There are men.
In that opening scene where you see David with his flock in that restaurant, the first thing that struck me was, one, the women and the men were separate. Mm-hmm. You saw a mother with a young daughter. You saw another mother with a young daughter who we don't meet them too much. But then all the men sit at their own tables. And it's really only David that addresses the women. And
who walks among them as well.
Immediately you're like, there's something not right here. This is not good. Whatever is going on here is not right. Now, it's just not, it's off. It
and we're
feels
about
very,
to
very
get to
off.
see very soon even more of that really nightmarish dynamic.
So Ellie returns to Joel. She just kind of guesses like where to inject the antibiotics. She does it right into the wound. You know, how much,
painful, but probably good choice. Like, sure.
Good choice. Yeah, as good a choice as any. We go back to Silver Lake and the resort. Dinner is getting cooked up. It looks like very, very red meat.
Yeah, it looks very fresh. Seeing as well,
very,
they just
very fresh
running out
meat.
of meat that surely you would have jerkied, etc.
We're putting this in tomato sauce because that's what we have. But because that's what we have, but also like it'll help cover up any kind of the redness.
The gamey texture.
Folks are kind of sitting around with their plates of this meat. And there's a great moment.
It's so good.
Moment when it's being cooked up, right? Where the woman who is stirring everything into the pot says to the guy who brings this tray of meat, "Oh, what is it?" And he just goes, well, first there's a long pause, like a 2 to 3, like a very, very long,
too long.
And
the pause
pause
again. Get a quicker answer in your head.
Yeah, and then he just goes, venison? Like almost like it's a question.
Yeah. It has the little lilt of the venison. Like, are you going to accept that?
So, everybody's sitting around eating or getting ready to eat their plates of venison. And you could see there's a really great kind of very, very small moment here where you see various people eating. Mm-hmm. Some of them are tearing into it. Others are like just nibbling at it. Mm-hmm. Others seem wary of it, like openly wary. And that is when David and James return with this big deer that they took off Ellie. And David could not be happier to be bringing this meat in. But then he sees that, people are like, wait, what are we eating?
Yeah, everyone else is like,
showed up. Yeah, if you just showed up with the meat, what am I eating right now? And David's like, hey, listen, okay, wait. This is one of the great fake outs in this episode too, where David says, okay, hold on, I need to say something. I know there are rumors going around the camp, okay? And they're true. I found the girl who was with the guy who murdered our friend.
So good. Because you're like, is he about to?
I really thought like he's about to say, hey, listen, we were starving.
Bro.
Yeah, we're starving.
It's ravenous time, baby. It's happening. We're eating some people. Yeah, no. I love that note that you made as well. Like, it's so well done to see the way that some people are just eating it so heartily. Some people are wary. Some people are nibbling. Because, like, we can tell just from the narrative storytelling of one episode that David is off key and that glance he gave to James meant her dad's getting eaten. So, of course, the people in the room would feel the same way. I like that respect of the intelligence of the characters and the intelligence of the audience to know that it's not realistic that every single person in there would just be yamming down the food, acting like it was completely normal. There's going to be people who are starting to cotton on to what David and James are doing.
And here we see how David keeps control of these people. He does it, one, through his generosity with sharing this food, which
communism
turns out to be, people. Spoiler. 2, by creating these external threats. He says, hey, I found the man. I found the girl. I know where she is. We're going to send the search party out tomorrow, and we're going to get revenge. He's out there. We're going to get him. And then 3, through outright fear and violence. The girl whose father was killed is like, I want them both dead. Why not kill the girl too? Like, why are you going to bring her back here? And David
seems like a
walks
good
up to her.
point. And also, like, I will say as well, I think this is another great narrative choice because surely that seems like what the leader would want. And that would have been a great moment for David to be like, you're right, my child. Like, we will get justice and vengeance, just like an eye for an eye in the Bible or whatever. But that is not the way David reacts. And it tells us so much about him and this colony.
He slaps this young girl to the floor.
Yeah, like off her chair.
Off her chair. Nobody moves.
Nope.
Everybody stays nailed to their seat. And he says, you know, basically, I'm your father now. You have to respect me, or this is what happens. Now let's say grace and eat dinner, which is probably your dad. Sadly.
It's so creepy. He's like, you think you've lost your father, but you still have a father.
That's right.
And he's, so creepy. And then he's like, and now eat your father. So there's lots of
now eat your
fathering
father. He'll
going
be part of you forever.
on.
The next day, Joel, hard to tell if he's getting better or not. Ellie goes outside to get some air and she sees a flock of crows go up, maybe half a mile away, very, very close. And she realizes that something is coming from that way. She sneaks around and she spots them. This is 5, maybe 6 men, including David and James. And of course, they are here to kill Joel if he isn't dead already. And David orders them to bring Ellie back. She is not to be harmed. James is like, it's just another mouth to feed, no? Like, do we have to? Maybe we let her stay here and die, or we kill her? I don't know. Maybe that's God's will.
Yeah,
and David gives James the most chilling stare.
Oof. Yeah, it's so scary. And I also love this moment because after watching it again, look, I'm not trying to make any justification for James's behavior here. And Troy is so great in this character. Like, it's so believable. This kind of weird, like, weakness, this like tweaky weakness of following David. But I also wonder, like, does he have an inkling? Like, do these men think Ellie would be better off to just be shot in the street than to go back and be with David? Like that, maybe he doesn't want to kill another person to actually feed them to someone else. Like, there's something here that I think is actually more than this idea of a mouth to feed. Like, I think there is deep down somewhere, there is a slight act of mercy as he sees it to just shoot her in the snow instead of taking her back.
That's an interesting read as well. It's, you know, certainly that idea of, well, it's better this way, mingled with the sincere vengeance that he is seeking, certainly would make killing a young girl a lot easier. Ellie tries to rouse Joel, no bueno. Desperately, she puts her knife in his hand and is like, listen, I'm going to try and lead them away. But if I can't, this is for anybody that comes down here. Joel is like just barely with it. He does not seem all the way conscious. Ellie then seals up the house, like puts a piece of furniture in front of the cellar door, gets on the horse and goes galloping down the street. She, you know, runs up on the guys, says, hey, motherfuckers, shoots a pistol shot at them, and then rides off. And they're ready to shoot her, but David is like, no, alive. I want her alive. Ugh. James then shoots Ellie's horse out from under her. R.I.P. horse. We didn't know your name, but it was really sad to see you go. Ellie gets the first of several concussions that she will get over the course of this episode.
Oh, man. Her brain is scrambled up in there.
I mean, she's like legitimately unconscious for like an hour, like a long time. It's actually medically concerning. They capture her easily. James is about to kill her when David shoots in the air and is like, no. Then he carries her off himself, which is fucked up. And then is like, I'll take her back by myself to our camp. You stay here and you look for Joel.
Yeah, he's like, if you want vengeance, get it that way.
Here.
Leave her
Go
alone.
get your vengeance.
Get him.
Here.
And sorry to them, they don't realize that they're essentially going up against the Terminator. Like, if you take a kid from Joel, if you take a little girl from Joel, if you take a baby from Pedro Pascal, as we know, you're
Yes.
going to be in trouble. So it is not going to go well for them, but good for them for trying to get their vengeance. Let's see how that goes.
Yeah, absolutely. What follows is Joel Wick.
Joel Wick, exactly. But
He-
it's Ellie instead of the little puppy.
He, the first victim sneaks into the house that Joel is in, drags the obstacle away from the cellar door, creeps down there, sees the bloodstained mattress, is like, who's down here? And then Joel stabs him in the shoulder / neck, and in classic Joel fashion,
Square.
It's like choking him out so he can't cry out, and you get this really stark shot of the light going out of this guy's eyes, and you stare at it for a long time. Like, you just see the dead man's face, and you watch him die.
They value life so much, the creators of this show, and I think it's something that really makes this stand out from pretty much any other post-apocalyptic storytelling. Even the game. I think it's one of the smartest choices they made in adapting
They make
it to
you
TV.
feel the cost.
Every death.
Yeah.
Every time somebody dies, it's horrific. It's terrible. Every time someone is hurt, it's horrific. Even if they've done something, there is a cathartic nature to what Joel is doing. But I like your John Wick reference, because there's that moment, obviously love John Wick, like the stuntman movie of all time. And I love Keanu. And there's that great moment where it's like, he's like, yeah, I guess you could say I was back. And this is definitely like old Joel is back. This is Joel that
He's
we
in
have
his
heard
comfort
about.
Yes.
This is that Joel. Everyone, Joel did so many bad things, Ellie. You can't trust him. You don't know the things that he did. We've seen reluctant Joel. We've seen tired Joel.
That's a great point.
But this is assassin Joel. This is going to kill you no matter what you tell him, Joel.
Where is thing that I want?
Yeah.
Tell me where it is.
And when you tell me, I'll kill you.
And we've spent the last several episodes talking about Joel's lack of comfort with anything that seems like peace or happiness, or the potential for happiness, or the potential to grow new bonds, which
it's the hard way.
He sees as like something to be taken from him. This is Joel in his element. This is Joel doing the thing that he is comfortable doing, and that's dealing out pain to people and bearing the cost himself, bearing the cost on his own body. Ellie comes to in a holding cell. David is there. He's been watching her sleep.
Ooh.
And he's like, listen, I'm the only thing keeping you from being torn apart by my followers. They want to kill you. But I'm here saying, no, let's give her a chance. So why don't you just tell me your name? And she's like, eat shit. David really, really wants Ellie to join up. And he keeps on pitching this story about, I can protect you. He's offering her a new life. He's like, listen, whatever you did before, your life
it's
before
over.
This day, it's over. Your relationship with that man, that's done. It's coming to an end. This is your new life. It's starting right now. Back at the town, Joel continues to go full Joel Wick. He takes out 2 more of David's men. He takes them captive, drags them to a house, and tortures them until they point out. One of them points out where Ellie is on a map.
Yeah.
Then he kills that guy, and then he picks up a pipe and he beats the fucking other guy's brains in.
Yeah, this is one of those moments where I just think we're constantly blown away by Pedro. He's such a brilliant actor. Like, we've seen how brilliant he is in The Mandalorian. We've seen this kind of quiet, stoic, tortured man that he can be in The Last of Us. He's also a brilliant comic actor. We've seen so many brilliant sides to him. But there is such a determination and violence in this sequence. Like, he is going to pop a man's kneecap off with his
There's
knife.
a comfort level too that in that scene
it's easy.
specifically. The way he, like, when he jams his knife into the right behind the guy's kneecap and says, "I'm just going to pop it off." You understand in that moment that Joel's done all this before. This is not new. He's done this. He's gotten people to tell them the thing that they don't want to tell him.
It's a routine.
Yeah.
And it makes so much of the earlier episodes make sense. I mean, imagine how uncomfortable it was for him to sit with Bill at their house and to pretend to be civil when he knew that what he could really do was kill Bill and take what he wanted. You know, this is the way that Joel gets things. And to see him, I thought it was really, one, as game players will know, this was needed in the series to show what Joel could do. Because Joel is not going to stop doing this. And we needed to understand that because we have not seen this kind of explosion of violence from him in this way yet. And that moment where the guy tells him, you know, he's in agony, he points out the map in this kind of, with the knife on the blood on the knife. And Joel just kills him. And that's when his friend realizes, oh shit, I'm going to die. And
the guy begs for his life. He's like,
why
but
did
he
you
told
do that?
you.
Like,
yeah, you told, but he did. Yeah.
And I think Joel says something like, he's like, don't worry, he did tell me. And then he just beats his head in with a pipe. And it's just like this, something has flicked a switch in his head. And Ellie is Sarah. Sarah is Ellie. Ellie is his daughter. Sarah is his daughter. This is, you fucked up. And there's no going back.
You fucked up. We go back to Ellie. She's alone in the cage. She's trying her darndest to escape. She's trying to unscrew little pieces of the fencing, of the gate hardware itself. And as she's doing that, she sees something across the room that absolutely shakes her. She goes white. And that's when David comes in with a tray of food. He slides this food under the cage. And then we see what Ellie is terrified of. There's like this smear of blood on the floor and a human ear. And David realizes he's caught, you know, to a certain degree. And he says, yeah, if, you know, for what it's worth, this is just deer meat, I swear.
Yeah, and then he switches tactics. This
switches
is how you know,
up.
This man is a master manipulator. He's like, now I'm just going to kind of make a joke about it. This is deer meat. Like, I'm giving you the good stuff. Don't worry.
This is when the true grooming really takes place. Yes. He's like, hey, listen, I'm letting you into my confidence now. Mm-hmm. You're in the inner circle now. Only a few people know that we're eating people.
And what is
and then you join us and you're going to be part of that. You're going to.
This is so scary because this is the ultimate first step of any kind of grooming and any kind of behavior that you don't want a kid to follow, which is an adult telling a kid, I know something secret and you can't tell anyone. This will be our secret. So they do this here, but they pose it as him telling her about them being cannibals. But we know what it really is. He's bringing her into his confidence. He wants her to feel like she owes him. He wants her to feel like there is something she knows that nobody else knows. It's so creepy and so well done.
He says, listen, I'm not proud of the fact that we're cannibals. But you also get the sense that he'll do anything to keep himself in control of his group. That's what this is all really about.
And it's not about
the creepiness. It's just about control. It's about maintaining his iron control over the people that fall under his sway and using them to satisfy himself however he wants to.
Exactly. I also think it's really important to point out, like, one, eating, scientifically, people know that eating human meat makes people sick because you're not supposed to do it. You can catch brain infections, things like Kuru, whatever. So he's not really protecting people. And the bigger issue here, as we talk about grooming, is consent. David admits that most people who are eating the meat do not know. He did not go out of his way to tell them. He did not pose this as some kind of democratic solution. Look, let's be real. In a post-apocalyptic...
You're starving, you do what you have to do, but also, at least you do bring it up to a debate. Hey, what do we think? Do we eat them?
Should we do this? And also as well, realistically, in a post-apocalyptic situation, there would actually probably be many cannibals. There might even be a cannibal black market of meat and jerky and all different kinds of things. But David doesn't care. He doesn't want to democratize it. He doesn't want to have a conversation. It's about manipulating people. It's about making people do something that is so taboo, so horrific, and keeping it from them. This is all part of his game. He enjoys... I mean, look, also, let's be real. Do we really think all the deer's gone? I don't think so. Ellie found one so easily.
Yeah, it was not,
this is control.
Do better, guys.
This is something that he is choosing to do because he enjoys it. And he kind of gets into that as he keeps trying to groom Ellie.
And he keeps saying, you're a natural leader, you're smart, you're loyal, you're violent, you're like me. And then he says, I've always had a violent heart. I struggled with it, but then the world ended and I was shown the truth. And here you really get the sense that he's actually coming clean on a certain level here. He is actually telling her a secret that the rest of the group doesn't know. The rest of the group thinks, after the fall of the world, David found God. No, David, but David's God is the cordyceps, and he says, look at the way. First of all, it won, and look at the way it won. It's fruitful. It multiplies all over the place. It protects itself. It protects its children, and it secures its future through violence. And Ellie's like, why are you telling me all this? Because you can handle it the way the others can't. Now, and, he then tells her, like, oh, I see you as an equal. We're going to be partners in this. Ellie asks about Joel. And David says, I can tell the others to stop looking for him. They'd spare him. They'd do that. I have that kind of pull. I can do that. He places his hand on the bars. Think of what we could do together. We could make this place perfect. And she moves towards him. He places his hand on hers. Imagine the life we could build. And Ellie says, whoa. And then bends his finger back and breaks it.
Yeah,
while
she
he's
snaps
stunned,
it.
she snaps it.
Badass.
There's a satisfying little pop too in the in the sound mix, and then she, as he is stunned and kind of dealing with this immediate pain, she is trying to grab the keys off his belt. He grabs her, knocks her head into the bars, concussion number 2, and she goes down. And he says, you little cunt, let's see what I go tell the others now. This petulant side now, the anger coming out. And Ellie says, like, you can tell them I'm the little girl who broke your fucking finger. Meanwhile, Joel, one of the great performances through injury in the history of sports and performance.
He's
Joel,
he's pushing through.
He's like Michael Jordan's flu game. He's got a gut full of penicillin, a stab wound in his abdomen, but he's going for it, folks. He manages to make it to Silver Lake. He breaks into what turns out to be the storehouse that the group is using, and he finds some of Ellie's stuff, and he knows that she's there. And then he looks in the other room. He sees their horse. May she rest in peace. And then he turns the corner, he sees some boats, and then just past the boats, he sees a couple of headless corpses that are just hanging, waiting to be butchered. Oh, shit. Meanwhile, David and James drag Ellie out of their cage, and they're about to cut her up. For real. Like, this is about to happen.
Yeah, we didn't talk about this yet either. Like, one of my favorite things about this episode, so they're in the steakhouse, right, this old restaurant, and they actually... It's this brilliant piece of production design that outside Ellie's cage, there's this huge wooden kind of butchering table that's just covered in little bloody nicks. And it's so horrific, but it's so mundane in the context of being in this butchering steakhouse until you realize what they've been butchering on it. And they're putting on her, and I guess she's fighting them. I think that, and that's when she bites him, right?
Yes.
He picks up the cleaver and she bites him, and she's fighting for her life.
And as they are about to bring this cleaver down and start cutting her up, she screams, I'm infected. And now so are you. And David looks at the bite on his hand. She's like, hey, roll up my sleeve. Take a look at this. And they see the trademark cordyceps looking kind of scar, but it's weird, right? It's clearly healed. And James is clearly absolutely fucking freaked out. He's freaked out. And Dave is like, but this doesn't make sense. She hasn't turned. She would have turned already. And then suddenly in this moment of confusion, this is really great. Like this is just a well-paced scene where you don't know, like, usually if something like this is not done well, the distraction is very obvious. It seems like there's too much time. Ellie just strikes and she grabs the cleaver, boom, right into James's head. James is now dead. And then she flees as David is shooting at her. Ellie finds herself in the restaurant of the old resort. And for people who've played the game, they recognize this setting and they recognize this boss battle. I think for me, probably the hardest. It's the hardest actual fight. For me, the hardest fight in the game, just because, I mean, it was one, very, very scary. And two, that this boss, incongruously for what the game is, just like had like clicker level hit points. That's an aside,
even though he's just a human,
just a guy. So Ellie now finds herself in the restaurant. She arms herself with like a smoldering log. She throws it. It lights the building on fire. Now it's starting to go up. And meanwhile, David is completely unfazed by the fact that this place is burning down all around him, and he is calling to her. He's talking to her in this creepy way.
He's just
like the boss
Ellie.
This is just like the fight in the video game. And he's saying, he's like calling her name. The fire is spreading. He tells her he's going to keep her. Now. You know what? No one's going to die. I was going to kill you. You're not going to die now. Now I'm going to keep you. I'm going to teach you. And he's saying all these really horrendous things to her. She lunges when his back is turned. He swings the cleaver. She gets below it, stabs him in the side. He is leaking. He's really hurt now. But Ellie is also stunned. This is her her third concussion after being knocked out for an hour and a half or something. He then climbs on top of her. He's choking her. He's clearly going to assault her. He says, I thought you already knew the fighting is the part I like the most.
And he's saying like, you don't need to be scared of my love. It's love. You don't need to be scared.
Here is the real guy. All the artifice, all the kind of like this warm smiles and Bible verses. Here is the real guy. And what's so insidious.
This is the man he is. This is who he wants to be.
This is the person he really is.
What he enjoys. This is what he lives for. This is why he thinks everything happens for a reason, because he's set himself up in a society where he can do this again and again and again, or so he thinks.
What's so insidious and evil about this guy is that he knows that even in this fucked up world, the things that he wants will not be accepted by people. So he has to use the things that are accepted by people to get control of them so he can get the things that he wants. He understands this is all put on to him so that he can get to this moment where he's taking whatever he wants from whoever. And then in that moment, Ellie just snaps. She grabs a cleaver, stabs him with it, and then proceeds to chop him up for like a solid 5 seconds, like a long
At
time.
least.
Full
she is
rage.
chopping him up. This is like directly from the game too. Like she is chopping him the fuck up. Like pieces. She's getting covered in blood. Again, in the game, we have seen Ellie more decisively murder people before this, but this is a very smart choice to essentially have her first real kill be this huge explosion of violence that is vengeful, that is righteous, that is horrific.
It's absolutely right. What could be more righteous than defending your own life and body? And she's doing it in this moment. And in a state that, you can imagine the adrenaline that's running through it, not to mention, as we, mentioned several times, the fact that concussions. She's not okay. She's not fully with it. It is just truly fight or flight, and she chooses fight, and she chops the shit out of this guy. She flees, goes outside the burning restaurant, and Joel finds her, grabs her from behind. She's still in fight mode, but he says, "Look, it's me, and then they embrace, and he says, "It's okay, baby girl," and you get the final, like, it feels like stone in this bridge between them, that it truly a father and daughter kind of relationship now. The father she never had, the daughter that he lost, and you feel that has been built now through these horrible circumstances. And then they head off together. What a terrifying and really disconcerting and really powerful episode.
Definitely the most horrifying episode yet.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And it really, first of all, an incredible performance by Scott Shepherd as David, where you really, that feeling of, if it's too good to be true, it must be. The way he speaks, his patter, the way he would only show his rage a few times, his secrecy, and yet here he is, this man of God who's so secretive. This is a great performance and a really, really eerie performance. And I do like the way this show and series has been structured, much like the game, where we go to a place we vanquish it, we move on, and then we never see these people again. But I also wonder, man, it would be nice to have a villain, that like pursues. But it's really created this interesting tenor and tone and texture of this show where it's like one horrifying existential obstacle after another.
Yeah, I also think there's such an interesting kind of skill that the creative team have showcased here, which is, they created Kathleen as a new character, right? And that is arguably our first big, like, oh, the most dangerous thing isn't the clickers, it's the humans. But it's such a different tone and tenor and story to what we see with David, even though arguably you're sending out the same message. And that, to me, that nuance between Kathleen still had a righteous vengeance, a righteous anger that she perceived. And she knew she was lost in it. There was a self-awareness there. That was more of a tragic, even though she was a horrific, cold-blooded killer in the end, as we saw. It's so interesting to me that you can do that storyline and then 3 episodes later you can have another human antagonist, but that is so different and so scary and so completely evocative of a different kind of fear. And I just think that is such a compliment to the way they're telling these stories, to be able to do that twice. The Walking Dead would do that, but it would be in different seasons. This is one season where we go from someone like Kathleen and then we meet David and we see a completely different kind of person. And I think something that I think you're totally right, like the chapter narrative is almost sequential in a way that, we talk about that with Star Wars, like the story of a week. Here it's the location of the week, which is very much...
Yeah, and then we move on.
Exactly. And it's really interesting because definitely David is so scary and that community is so horrifying, but so kind of interesting as a psychological study. You could have had 3 or 4 episodes there. You could have David be recurring, but that narrative choice to just keep moving, to recognize that part of the game where you kill someone, you leave, you move on, you go to the next town. I think it's quite a brave choice for prestige storytelling, and it really is nice. I'm still every day surprised that they chose to just do the game in 9 episodes, and it makes me so happy because we could have been just getting to Kathleen now.
They could have milked it. Yeah,
they could have milked it 3 seasons, and I'm always impressed by that choice, and I think it's really paying off.
Yeah, I the other thing about this episode, you knew that, I never asked myself, where the fuck is everybody else? Where the hell is, for one, most of David's like fighting men had been chewed up by this engagement, like Joel had fucked them up.
Joel took care of them.
Yeah, and then the rest of them, as we saw from James, who was, in many ways, David's closest confidant, they were on some level waiting for some sign that they don't have to do what this guy is saying anymore. Like, yes. I can't imagine
I like that.
Anybody coming. I think it's actually evocative of like his leadership style, that nobody is like running towards this burning building to figure out like what's gone wrong. Yeah, they're probably like, oh, good.
Yeah, and I know it's true. And I think as well that for the women, the children, the citizens, they're too scared. They don't do anything unless he tells them to. And I actually think that's really interesting because you're right. It's evocative of the leadership style, but also a lot of times when men groom younger women and groom children, groom teenagers, it's because people their own age will not interact with them, will not respect their behavior, their abusiveness. And I think in that way as well, David knows that James doubts him. He knows that these adult men are kind of turning against him. So he's looking to Ellie. He's saying, we can start something new. You can be my confidant. Yeah. And in that way, it evokes that too. I thought the writing on this was so well done and so kind of devastating and just horrific, but never in a way that felt inauthentic. Like it felt true to who David is in this show. And yeah, just wow. And Bella really going for that Emmy, I feel like, at this point. Once we get into like episode 8. Pedro, obviously. I mean, I feel like he's a shoo-in after this.
Well, up next, let's go into Nerd Out. And of course, we're going to continue our Last of Us coverage right up until the finale. Stay tuned.
So, in today's Nerd Out, where you tell us what you love and why, or share a theory that you're excited about, which, you know, we love theories, Seth offers an intriguing Quantumania X-Men crossover theory, which obviously we're incredibly happy to share because we bloody love the X-Men. So, Jason, I will allow you to do the honor.
Hello, Jason and Rosie. Since watching Ant-Man and The Wasp Quantumania, I've been wondering about the rebels that we meet in the quantum realm. Is it just me, or does it feel like we have been introduced to the MCU's version of the X-Men? Quaz could easily be a code name for Professor X. There's a Cyclops character who blasts energy beams from his face, a character who uses blades and has regeneration skills, and there's also a character that is a blob, aka I'm saying this, not Seth. Yeah, I immediately thought, oh, that's fucking Glob Herman.
Yeah.
I would love your thoughts, Seth. I think while I don't think that those are the X-Men, I think you're onto something in that the power set did
They're
feel
analogs.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it did feel very pointed.
Yeah.
I
Also,
mean, when you in a Marvel context, when you
Mm-hmm.
introduce a character who can read everybody's thoughts, like I think you know what you're doing.
Yeah, and I think as well, something I was really interested in, they talked a lot about this being a kind of Wizard of Oz inspired story where they venture into this alternate world, this kind of multiversal plane, you know, the quantum realm being its own space and time. I do wonder, and I would love this, Seth, you inspired this, I hadn't thought about this before, but maybe there's a world where William Jackson Harper is our MCU Charles, and that was just an alternate universe version of him. You know, in every universe, he has the psychic powers, you know. I think as well, I think it's really great that you caught onto this, because the truth is they do this for fans. They put these analogs in. They say, oh, wouldn't it be fun if we had a, you know, oh, wait, isn't this kind of like the giant size crew? Like, oh, what if we just added one more character? So I love that. I don't necessarily think that those are going to be the final versions, but I would love to see a world where we get some kind of recognition that perhaps this was some foreshadowing or seeding or some multiversal plane. If not, I just want to see William Jackson Harper come back again, because I just think
absolutely
put him in more stuff. And also him as Charles. Yes. I would love to see it, actually.
I think that would be fantastic. Thank you so much, Seth. And of course, if you have any theories or passions you want to share, hit us up at xray@crooked.com. Instructions in the show notes. That's it for us. Rosie, any plugs? Plug.
You can read my Last of Us coverage at IGN. I have some cool stuff coming up at Polygon. You can check out my website, rosieknight.com, where you can find all my work and read some cool comics. I am Rosie Marks on Letterboxd and Instagram. And then obviously here twice a week.
Catch the next episode on Friday, March 10th for episode 2 of The Mandalorian. And remember, we are bringing you 2 episodes a week, every Wednesday and Friday on your podcast deliverer of choice. That's where you can find us. Twice the Pedro Pascal, twice the babies, twice the Pedro escorting children across a wasteland. Find us every Wednesday and Friday in your ear holes.
And if you want to see us with your eyeballs as well as listen with your ear holes, you can subscribe on YouTube. We have a very good amount of subscribers. I'm very impressed. That's thanks to Jason and bringing that channel over. So if you go there, subscribe, you can watch full episodes. Delon does a great job with those. Follow us at XRVPod on Twitter, where we're always sharing cool stuff, retweeting a lot of Pedro Pascal love at the moment. And check out our Discord. You can meet tons of amazing fans, all kinds of rad people there talking about all kinds of rad stuff. Some of the stuff is outside of the realm of X-Ray too. So if you're a little bit of a newcomer to the stuff that we talk about, it's just a place to hang out. And there's all different kinds of conversations going in there. And me and Jason are in there all the time. It's linked to my Letterboxd. So there's a whole channel where you can just laugh at all my bad movies that I watch, which people have a lot of fun doing. It's rather joyful. And of course, let's not forget about the need for 5-star reviews.
5-star ratings, 5-star reviews. We gotta have them. We need them. We desperately plead for them every episode. You gotta give them to us. Here's one from Jan Hart. The Last of Us. I discovered your show through Crooked Media and found the episode about The Last of Us so good and informative. I watched the HBO episode, then listened to your podcast, then go back and watch the episode again with new eyes. 5 stars all around. Thank you, Jan.
Thank you so much, Jan.
Nice. See you next time, folks.
Bye.